Good evening. I would like to call to order the public meeting of June 3rd, 2025. Would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? Thank you. Good evening, Lower Moreland Township School District community. My name is Dr. James Lee. Thank you for attending this evening's meeting of the Lower Moreland Board of School Directors. I would like to remind our board, as well as members of the public, that this meeting is being live streamed on our district YouTube channel and that a recording of the meeting will be posted on our school board website within 48 hours. I welcome my fellow board members and members of the public. To our board members, please be reminded that for sound purposes, you must turn on your microphone and speak directly into it for the sound to be audible both for in-person community members in the auditorium, but also for anyone listening on the live stream. After speaking, please turn off your microphone. Mr. McGuinn, would you please take a roll call of the board?
Certainly. Mrs. Baker.
Present.
Mr. Berardi.
Here.
Ms. Blanton.
Here.
Dr. Butler. Dr. Butler is absent. Ms. Cannon.
Here.
Ms. Darian.
Present.
Mr. Geiger.
Present.
Dr. Lee.
Present.
Mr. McKee.
Present.
There are 8 members present.
Thank you, Mr. McGuinn. I will now ask Dr. Best to take a roll call of cabinet members and administrators who will also be participating this evening.
Mrs. Galdo.
Present.
Dr. Hemrick.
Present.
Mr. Cole.
Present.
Mr. Giordano.
Present.
Mr. McGuinn.
Here.
Mr. Patel.
Present.
All members present.
Thank you, Dr. Best. Before we move on to our presentations, I'll note to the public that prior to this this meeting, the board met in an executive session for a security presentation, an employee issue, and an Act 93 discussion. That will bring us to our presentations and discussions. We'll start with our student rep to the board.
Good evening, community and board. My name is Mia Dubin, and this is my final presentation. Thank you. Thank you. It's been an amazing opportunity to serve as one of the student representatives for the past 3 years, and I've learned a tremendous amount through this experience, so I wanted to thank you for giving me this opportunity, but I'm excited for the future of this role, and yeah, it's been a great experience, and I'm going to continue to take this leadership skills with me in my future, so thank you. So now for the presentation. So for the month of June, we have some exciting things. So for our school climate update, at Pine Road, we have multicultural night, whereas at Murray Avenue, we had indoor field day activities, and at the middle school, there was a great amount of concerts, and lastly, at the high school, there was solstice. So to begin with Pine Road Multicultural Night, so this event was full of students, faculty, and the community gathering to celebrate just the different cultures and of the community and the Pine Road students. This was full of performances, activities, and food, and I think it's a great way for our school to come together and learn from one another, but by also just taking advantage of learning our differences so we can learn from one another, and I just think it's a beautiful thing that our school offers, especially starting the students out so young. So next at Murray Avenue, we had the indoor field day activities. So I remember my time at Pine Road Middle School, and I loved field day. I thought it was a great way to participate in fun activities. I'm not very athletic, so I think that this is a fun activity. These activities anyone can participate in and learn teamwork and cheer each other on. So I love field day, and I think it's a great tradition that our school continues to have. But yeah, take it, if you can see some of those pictures. Looks like they're having fun. So next at the middle school, students in grades 7 and 8, they had their concerts. So this was like chorus, orchestra, and band. And I thought this was great I love that our school does this just to embrace the musical abilities of our students. And I love how music can bring so many people together and that the community comes and watches. I think it's very special, and the students did a great job as well. And then similarly, at the high school, students and staff as well participated in Solstice. And my family, we all went to watch the Solstice, and it was great just to see some of my teachers performing, playing instruments, also seeing all my friends singing. And I just think it's so amazing how everyone who watches just appreciates it, and just it was so warm, and the environment was just amazing and lively, and it was definitely an incredible moment, especially just seeing everyone I love in like one place enjoying it and taking advantage of the music. But also it was during the art show as well, which was really nice because a lot of the artwork was hanging in the hallways. So while people were watching Solstice, they also had the opportunity to go walk the hallways and see some of the high school students' artwork, which was really nice. And I think it's a great way to showcase the artistic abilities of all the students in the high school. And I have some exciting news. So for the next school year, we have our new student representatives. So Adona and I will know I'm graduating, but for next year, we have two very special people. We have Yuki Wu, who is going to be graduating in 2027, and then we have Isabella Phillips, who is graduating in 2028. So congratulations to you two. Yay. I know you guys are going to do amazing, and they've already demonstrated amazing leadership, so this is amazing, and I'm excited for the future of the program. So you guys, you got this. You're going to be great at it. But yeah, so that concludes my presentation. Thank you so much, and as always, if you have any questions, please let me know. Thank you.
So, Mia,
Yes.
are you willing to share your plans for next year? Where are you going to school? Or,
Yeah, so I'm going to be attending the University of Maryland next year. I'm doing their scholars program, and I'm going to be doing journalism as my major.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
And by the way, your hair looks fabulous
Oh,
tonight.
thank you. Thank you.
It's the prom tonight? Are you going to the prom now or what?
Thursday.
Oh, Thursday.
Well, Ms. Dubin, thank you for your service to the board and for helping to establish this role. Particularly, I was impressed with the cell phone policy that you helped us to understand and to help implement. So I think you should be really proud of your work. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions for Ms. Dubin? Well, congratulations again. Our next presentation will be from our partners at ICS for an update.
Sorry. Can you hear me? Good. Great to be back. Thanks for having us. Appreciate it. Want to go through a little bit of the history of how we got here, right? And then the initial projects, the summary of the process that we went through, the bids that we got back, and the steps going forward from there. So as you recall, starting last summer, we went and visited all the buildings, put boots on the ground, did a lot of surveying to assess the situation at each of the existing buildings in the district to identify where there was need for facilities and educational goals that were also conveyed to us through that process with the administration and the interaction over that time. We came back with a whole list of things, a 10-year capital needs and so forth, and then we went back with the board's guidance and the administration's guidance and coordination and developed a much more refined list of more imminent needs, things that we classified as more in that warm, safe, dry mode, right? Things that are going to keep you out of school or things that are, safety issues for your facilities. And we came back and got a $3 million budgeted project for that. And then we were approved to go out and solicit, develop bids and solicit those bids. And that's where we come back to today. So just at a high level, these are the areas of that red, yellow, orange, green chart, that shows expected lives, where we're hitting with these different projects, right? So as areas of need throughout the district, just on an expected life. But again, it was a little bit more sophisticated than that, given that we had a lot of interaction, certainly with Mr. Freeman, Dr. Best, Mr. McGuinn, all gave us guidance and steered us through the process to identify and help make decisions during the process of identifying the needs and the solutions. So those primary priorities that came out of here was, the cooling plants at Murray Avenue and the middle school, distribution center, distribution systems. We're able to defer some of those, and then we're able to focus on the pool dehumidification unit at the middle school and the rooftop unit for heating and cooling at a section of Pine Road Elementary. HVAC controls, these are things that control your learning environment and enable you to, keep the air and, permissible for school. Fire alarms, you had some aged fire alarms across 3 of your schools. We were able to address 2 of them through this effort, with the third one, I think, is going to be implemented in-house and more of a maintenance routine because there was already some update done to that system. So that's part of the process, is identifying things that can be self-performed by the district, which ones are best for any other implementation method. So we took that initial list and really drilled down to the things that we could accomplish with that $3 million budget in mind. As far as what we do as part of this process, beyond developing those priorities, right, we are the design, so we're the boots on the ground, the heads in the ceilings, right, looking at all the existing equipment, and when we go out and make the designs, making sure that it's inclusive of all the needs, that anything that you could actually reuse, you would reuse. So it's going from that broader, hey, these are identified as needs by age or by their performance or by reports or by your work history, into actually looking at the particulars, the parts and pieces of these components, to then outline what should be part of the scope of the competitive process for pricing. And then we go through, manage that, meeting after meeting with Dr. Best and Mr. McGuinn. Mr. Freeman were good enough to give us their time several times since we were kind of kicked that off in early February, to continue to refine, make some of those design decisions, understand where there's cost savings that are possible, see where the rub spots are, and give us some alternates so we can make decisions coming out of the bids to best utilize the process, right? And then, of course, we're going to be part of the boots on the ground of managing this, so that you have a layer of insulation between the contractors and the folks inside the school, right? There shouldn't be a situation where work's being done where we're not there to, so they're not coming up to the principals, or they're not coming up to the teachers, or they're not in a place that they shouldn't be. Pretty robust construction management process, and all the documentation that, is the source of a well-run, on time and in budget process for projects. So those bid packages that you approved to send out, your bid package 1, we've gone through and talked about the scope of these. We were able to come back through that process and, in fact, add a few things to the scope, make some executive decisions about finding efficiencies, and bring some scope into this and still come in under that initial budget just for the bidding portion of these packages at a savings, or a reduction, I should say, better than savings, of $76,000 as to what we were projecting going forward. Again, this is just the hard bid costs, right? But we were able to add these variable air volume boxes, in the first bid package, make those new that originally weren't part of scope, add 3-year warranties at a pretty low price because we feel that there's value in that. We were able in bid package 3 to actually add a significant allowance for deficiencies. So when they're going through and, updating the kind of the brains behind the building automation controls, they can find different thermostats or other pieces of end equipment, actuators and so forth, the actual pieces that control and regulate all the equipment. There's an allowance in there to fix those things as they're identified over time. So again, able to add some more scope. The cooling tower sump, a refurbish alternate, that's going to save about $60,000 or so for it. So a pretty good outcome, all things being told, a fair amount of bidders that we got back. You should have each received the bid recommendation letters that have all the details, pretty robust set of documents detailing what was included, what the decisions were, who the bidders were, and of course the end results and outcomes. So we're pretty satisfied with the process to this point. So this is how it all comes together in the final budget, accounting for all the different particulars of the $3 million budget, including still $102,000 of construction contingency that will go back to the district, right? That's just an allowance for the district to spend should there be items that come up during the implementation of these projects, in order of change orders and so forth. That would be an allowance to go in and fill those in. So budget of $3 million, we're in at 2.9, 2.3 or so there. Pretty good outcome. Does anybody have any questions to this point?
Yeah, I have a question. So, well, thank you, and I know we have later on our agenda the actual bid documents with your recommendations, and one question I have is maybe more of a high-level question, more so for our public. $3 million is quite a large sum, but what might you think would be the immediate impacts that our students might feel on a day-to-day, or our administrators, or are there efficiencies in terms of, energy cost savings, other things that we might expect in the near future?
Right, so the Murray Avenue chiller plant and the consistency that will bring will hopefully, improve the learning environment. So many of these things are kind of behind the scenes and they're not super outward or directly impactful, like the fire alarms, right? You're not gonna know, other than the sound, they're gonna sound a little bit different because there's gonna be, voice coming over it, instructing people. It's gonna be up to the current codes in that respect, where it's not just gonna be a alarm blaring, it's gonna be directions for folks. It's areas of recovery have been updated and included in that, so we were able to actually broaden that scope a little bit. I think significantly having a dehumidification unit at the pool is going to be something that people are going to notice, 100%, something that actually functions. Consistency on these things. The VAV boxes should add some comfort, and then these controls, when you go through and do these controls, as I mentioned with the deficiency allowance in there, you're going to find out that this wasn't working or that wasn't working or this could be. So overall, you hope to get to a more consistent environment. But as far as, hey, oh my gosh, it's totally different, probably not a lot of that, other than the pool, right? You probably would recognize it more so there. I'd say that's probably the most directly impactful. But again, these are all the systems kind of behind the scenes that, keep the place functioning, and they're not as, glamorous maybe as you'd hope. Certainly. Thanks.
So I'm thinking of the large amount of soft costs from the building of this building, and I'm just looking for guidance from Mr. McGuinn or ICS on the kind of ratio, I guess, of what we're planning for in terms of soft costs here as it compared to like what we experienced here, just to make sure we're planning for enough in terms of soft costs, should something arise.
So, the soft costs in that bottom line those are the ones that have largely been used in the design and development process. The line item there for construction phase site supervision, that's what's called a reimbursable, right? So if you don't use it, you keep it, right? So that's a fair estimation of what we've approximated for the cost of having people on the site to manage these things and make sure that you're getting what you pay for, that they're appropriately, the parts and pieces are appropriately installed, and that you have that layer of insulation, like, hey, you're not supposed to be here, you're supposed to have this many folks on the site, X, Y, Z. So it's really robust on-site management, and that's what we've approximated for that as part of this process.
And to differentiate between a project of this scope, of the high school, so each of those bid packages are just one kind of piece of a certain building. We already know included in the costs, or the bid costs for each of the contractors is, for example, the dehumidification system itself. So it's a piece of equipment that they have coming in. Within that number, I think there's a little bit of play, and again, that's where the construction contingency comes in. As John had indicated, there is some design contingency in the Johnson Control for the controls of the buildings. You never know what you're not going to know. However, the contractors that we're working with, the Hirschbergs, who are the winning bidder on 2 of those, they know our buildings intimately. Johnson Controls know our buildings intimately. So they, in addition to knowing the buildings, they did thorough walkthroughs with Mr. Mr. Hunter, Bob Hunter from ICS, as well as Mr. Freeman, to take a look and make sure that they were confident in, their bid package and looking at the scope. I will say, John, if you could flip back to the number of bidders. For these smaller type projects, that's a pretty good number of bidders, and the spread amongst the bidders were fairly close. So, for example, the low bidder wasn't like $200,000 lower, so they were all kind of in the same ballpark. The difficulty when you do any sort of renovation, and this is honestly when the district gets to that point for renovating a building, you never necessarily know what's behind the wall. We think we know what's behind the wall. They were all renovated in the early 2000s, and the folks from ICS had all that information. So we feel that it's, these are pretty good numbers, but again, you just don't know. But we do have some design contingencies with the soft cost, and honestly, right there, the $76,000 is other costs that we were prepared to spend. Now, we saved it here, but if we happen to have a change order, we could potentially dip into that as well.
Thank you. And I think sorry, Steve. My other question you answered already in mostly, but have we worked with any of these folks before? It sounds like we have.
We've worked with all, Hirschberg, if you recall. They were the ones who bailed us out with the heater in the pool. They are also, we work with them for plumbing and HVAC for projects that are a little bit bigger than, we can handle in-house. Johnson Controls holds most of our contracts currently for control systems in all of our buildings. And Keystone Fire and Security, if you recall, when we were doing the high school, and it was determined through the county communication systems that we needed to have a booster system in there. And if you recall, Mr. Lynch was projecting a certain amount per square foot, and he was projecting about 200,000, and Keystone came in with about 90,000. And they did a great job. And we've expanded our use of using Keystone. They're a very solid contractor, and they get the job done. And again, I think they're eager to work in our district, so.
Thank you.
So looking at the milestone, the schedule, if we approve it at the June 17th meeting, when will the work start? Because it looks like we're trying to finish it by October of '26.
Yeah.
So a year and, 3 months, 4 months. Are you planning on starting in July of 2025, like right away, or?
So we'll get through the contracting process, right? And some of these are kind of a little bit longer lead times, right? So even though that pole dehumidification or RTU has a sooner timeline for implementation, there's still many months of procurement lead time on that. So it's going to be based around, we're going to be clear, it's going to be as fast as possible within the guidelines of the district. So that August timeline for most of these things, we would hope to be well in front of that, but it's going to be a matter of procurement, right? When they can actually get the equipment here, and then when we can find opportune times and seasons to implement based upon the school district's schedules, right? So it's going to have to be coordination about, hey, when's it available? We're on spring break here, or we're out, for holiday break at this time, or it's half day, or it's testing. We don't want anybody in here, type of thing. So that's the type of coordination that will go on consistently. But from the beginning, we'll get these things contracted, right? So say it all gets approved, goes to form. We go through the process of contracting, then we'll have a kickoff meeting, right? And these folks all have some deadlines to hit as part of the contracting process.
Right.
But the reality is that everybody wants to get it done as soon as possible.
Right.
We do too. We'd love to have all this stuff done sooner than later. It's not as though it behooves anybody to push it out.
Right.
So it's really coordination. When can we get in there? When can we do it?
And none of this work will affect the school day? We won't have to close schools or anything for any reason? This is something that could be done behind the scenes?
That's right. So we're going to target using breaks in the calendar or next summer,
Okay.
right, to implement.
Yeah.
Yeah, we wouldn't ever have someone out of school for
Right.
these type of things.
I
Yeah.
figured.
Mr.
some-
Geiger, I
Barring
think,
some, craziness.
yeah, I think the biggest impact, and John, correct me if I'm wrong, would probably be setting and hooking up the dehumidification system
Yeah.
for the pool. So that we would coordinate with Lower Moreland Swim and Dive.
Right.
Making sure that we're not affecting their season. When's a good time. And honestly, at the end of the day, it's a benefit to that organization as well. We heard them pretty loudly when they were here with the heater and some of the other shortcomings, and this would be a welcome addition to
Yeah,
the pool.
it's not as though we're replacing a functional unit. So, I'm sure the people will be eager to make any sort of accommodations, and we'll work
Yeah.
with that, right?
Right.
Coordinate.
Hard to breathe, so
Yeah.
we'll make the accommodation. And as far as the capital projects fund, Mark, remind everybody, what's the balance in our current capital projects fund?
So we have, if you recall from each meeting, we do a capital projects log of which these numbers were incorporated into it, and we'll update that with
Okay.
actual numbers.
Later?
Once June is, if in fact these projects are approved.
Right.
So we had $3 million set aside, and then beyond that, there was a remaining balance of about $765,000.
Okay.
And we've talked about ways of bolstering that moving forward, and
Okay.
that will probably dovetail a little bit into my next presentation after
Okay.
these guys are done.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
So if there are no other questions, for the board's reference, and John did mention that the recommendation letter, as well as all the appropriate backup, is on the board agenda under school board. So what we'll do, if there's no objections, we will move all those motions. I mean, certainly we'll talk about it at the time, but if there's no objections, we'll move those to, for approval at the June 17th meeting. Just procedurally, that's how it will roll.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
That'll bring us to a 2025-26 budget update. Mr. McGuinn.
Again, I'd like to thank the ICS team. Remember also, included in my budget, and as we talked about, trying to remember when we did it, but we approved a retainer in addition to the services that ICS will provide for these projects. We approved a retainer for these folks to be another set of eyes and ears for us to help out our facilities department. Obviously, they're already paying dividends, and they're a very good resource. So they are also, I have to give a plug to these guys. If anybody's plugged into what happened in Abington with their referendum for the new middle school, these guys were behind that. So kudos to the ICS team. And I know it's an exciting project that they're going to start in Abington. So thanks, guys, unless you guys want to sit through a budget. Can I go? No, I'm sorry. This is our budget update before the June 17th meeting when we are planning to approve the budget. The first couple slides I'm going to go through fairly quickly because, again, we've seen this. Again, this is a recap of where we were as of the last work session. We had made $462,000 worth of changes from the initial shortfall. That's where we stood at the end of, at the May work session. In May, we made some further expenditure reductions. At a request of Mrs. Baker, we asked our building principals to sharpen their pencil, Dr. Best, and see if they could find some savings. All four principals, I'm happy to say, were able to find some reductions within their building budgets, and that's reflected there. We had two, one was expected, one was not expected, two teacher resignations, fairly new teachers, so the reduction for the replacements, you can see there that it's, they were not veteran teachers, so there wasn't that big of an impact. We had another unexpected teacher resignation with a little more experience, so we had a little bit of savings there. So about almost $73,000 of reductions from May in expenditures. On the revenue side, because, let me go back, We had some reductions in total salary here. There's certainly a reduction in what the state gives us back in Social Security and retirement adjustments, so that's actually a negative on the revenue side of $15,000. We got a little bit more property tax allocation dollars, as we talked about last meeting. We talked about the homestead exemption going from $572 to projected $631. To do that, there was more money. When you match that against dollar for dollar, the reduction of real estate taxes, taking into account the collection rate and so on and so forth, there's actually a net gain of about $7,300 to total revenue. Based on a decision from the school board to grandfather in a couple Bryn Athyn students who started in this district this year, then moved to Bryn Athyn. They plan to continue. We can build a revenue line item in for receipts from another LEA on the revenue side. And then, if you recall, in May, notwithstanding the proposed over 55 development, based on history, I was looking to potentially increase real estate transfer tax. I had indicated 100,000, not comfortable with 100,000, so I increased it 50,000. So revenue adjustments there of 87,000, and that's where we are as I stand here tonight. From where we started to where we are now, we've adjusted the budget about $622,000. Again, Act 1 allowance, or allowable tax increase under Act 1, the proposed referendum exception, which we've been approved for by the state, and the amount that we're still short. Again, this is information that we've seen, just updated for May. So, what did we talk about? Budget gap strategies. All this looks the same with 4 exceptions. This is now 169 properties are still outstanding to settle. We'll see that on the next slide. 7 properties have settled, average assessment of $284,337. 164 properties are outstanding for real estate transfer taxes. We had a couple more settle and come through in the monthly run that I just received yesterday late afternoon. So, and I've adjusted this to say adjust accordingly based on assumptions. Let me take you over here. 12 properties have sold. Here are the purchase prices. There are 2 things I'm going to flip back between this slide and the previous slide. If everyone take a look at the purchase prices, they span the gambit of from 1.3 million down to 670 million, 670,000. 670 million would be good. And then assessment increases, all right around 282, 283, 284. Let me go back to our assumptions. If we assume, and in the assumptions, I'm using $250,000 of assessment increases, whereas the average has been 284. So we're being conservative there. I'm assuming $750,000 purchase price, whereas you can see the average is a bit higher than that. Keep that in mind. So again, same numbers up here. I didn't update the presentation since when we posted it on Friday from the information that I received late yesterday. We're going to go with this information. So here are our 2 numbers that we can deal with. 622,000, 899,000 comes to about 1.52 million. In green, this number used to be 100,000. It's 50,000. I moved on that, and that was reflected in our revenue adjustments in May. Interest earnings, I do not feel comfortable adjusting our interest earnings at all based on what's happening. I think we are, right now we're trending about $200,000 more than budget right now for this year. I just cannot get a handle on where the Fed is going to go with their rate. I think at some point they're going to reduce the rate in calendar year 2025. but I don't see large-scale reductions. And I think keeping the interest earnings budget number where it's at now, the district will be safe. So this is a big slide. Has a lot of information on there. So let me walk you through here. These are potential, let me stress, potential tax increases. Shortfalls, this $2,809,000 includes assuming utilizing $785,000 of fund balance. This tax increase generates this amount of revenue, and this is all on, this next column would be an averaged assessed home. Our median assessment in Lower Moreland is a little less than $210,000. So the average annual increase for each of these potential tax increases are denoted here. The next column breaks it down monthly, because a lot of our homeowners most likely have mortgages, so it's factored into your mortgage payment. We talked about this column last time. This is the effect of the increase in gambling proceeds and the more sterling tax credits. So on an average assessed home, if we increase the tax millage by 4%, the real increase is less than 4%. It's 3.56. So on and so forth, all the way down. So over here is the amount that we would still be short. This column assumes that we're using $785,000 of fund balance. We would still be short this amount, of which we would plug in the bottom amount to make us reconcile. We would add a factor of these revenue sources to total revenue, making the assumption that transfer taxes will come in at that $750,000 number, and 173 properties would settle at $250,000 and only have 6 months worth of taxes come in. So the last column, let's talk about this now. Let me go back a couple slides. This is our fund balance. This is what we're planning to use. There's 600, there's 710, there's 785 in total. That's how we're planning to use right now. We've talked about structural deficits, not having your revenue equal expenditures, being supplemented. Good evening, Dr. Butler. Dr. Butler has arrived. Having fund balance to supplement your tax increase to balance your budget. This column would put in, if we used no fund balance, how much would we still be overextended, I guess would be a word, utilizing $1,521,000 of new revenue. This shade of orange, I didn't want to make it red, we would still be short some, so I would recommend that you'd still use some fund balance. When it turns to green, although my screen looks a little blue, when it turns to green, this means if your future revenue is here and we're not utilizing any fund balance on any of these columns, we still have a little bit of wiggle room in what could come in. So we've talked about projections. You can certainly go with 4%, for example, and if you utilize no fund, or utilize $785,000 of fund balance, you would be covered. We've talked about where we have been in utilizing fund balance. We've talked about S&P downgrading the school district. When the district needs to go out for another borrowing, one of the major items that S&P looks at, and in fact was a reason why they downgraded the district, was the amount of fund balance. So, given where we stand today, it would be my recommendation that the board consider not utilizing fund balance to balance this budget. I know it's a difficult decision, and even within that decision, there is some projections and some guesswork. A few things that are going in favor of the district is the difference between this column and what the real increase is. What this will do is reset the district, if you utilize no fund balance, to future-proof the district and to start building your fund balance back up. And how would you do that effectively? With the need for capital projects, as we've talked about. One strategy that we could use is if your revenues on budget equal your expenditures, then any more dollars that you collect versus any dollars that you don't spend would go to fund balance. You can, instead of reserving fund balance for PESers or for healthcare, you can set up within the general fund a reserve for capital projects. What that will do will be two things. One, it'll start to build your general fund balance, general fund balance, which is what rating agencies look at as opposed to your capital projects fund. So that would be a benefit to the district. Number two, if that fund balance, I'll use round figures, if it accumulates to $500,000 and the board is so inclined to have $250,000 worth of capital projects, you can then, through a board motion, designate a capital projects transfer from the general fund, that $500,000, $250,000 worth to go to your capital projects to be utilized in the capital projects fund. The funds can't go back, but if you keep it in the general fund for capital projects, it A, builds your capital projects fund when you want to move it over, but B, helps to build your general fund balance for the next time the district is rated for a bond issue. And remember, if your rating is increased, all taxpayers will pay less over a course of 20, 25, or 30 years, however long the bond issue is, because you have a better bond rating. So let me go back to the screen again. Let me finish. Let me go to the last screen here. This item is not in the budget. We've talked about this. I can tell you that I've seen an article, and I will caution the board, and Mr. Geiger is probably our senior board member. He's probably heard me say this. As the Act 1 indices start to go down, you're going to start to see more articles, such as the William Penn School District in Delaware County, who is building into their budget this number, what it equates for them. If they do not get that statewide cyber tuition rate implementation, cyber school adjustments from the state, they've already talked about making making cuts to the arts and athletics. You're going to see more of that as that Act 1 index comes down. We've seen it before. So this is probably, in the foreseeable future, one of your in the foreseeable future, one of your last times that the board will be able to potentially increase taxes. You're most likely not going to see a special education exception for this dollar amount, and projected Act 1 indices are going to be less than what it is right now, which is 4%. So, as we make these decisions, the administration is looking for some direction on how to build the final budget for adoption in 2 weeks. Certainly, there's a lot of questions. I spoke a lot. I hope I covered everything, but I open the floor.
Mr. McGuinn, if I understand correctly, you can move from your general fund to the capital fund. It can't go, it's not reciprocal,
That's correct.
but that will not affect your borrowing because it's just moving to another fund?
Now, what I would advocate the board to consider is reserving within the general fund, similar to what we've done for PESers and for healthcare, but reserve it in the general fund. That way, it builds up your total fund balance in your general fund. If the board selects to do potential capital projects, as denoted maybe in the next tranche, then you would make through board motion, a transfer from the general fund to the capital projects fund to then pay it out of the capital projects fund. You're sort of addressing two issues at once. You're starting to build your capital projects fund, but you're doing it in such a way that it's helping your general fund balance come up at the same time, if that makes sense.
So you can take from the general fund, which I knew, you could take the general, go to the capital.
Correct.
Not reciprocal, but if you had a borrowing, they would look at both funds, the amount?
While they look at both funds, they consider looking at the general fund more important because that is more general operating expenditures.
So what would be a healthy general fund?
The general fund budget, it's recommended that we should be at 8%. Hold on. How did I know Mrs. Baker was going to ask this question? So at the end of 23-24, we were at 8.24% total fund balance. The state recommends 8% of unreserved. Factoring in what we were utilizing this year, remember we were using about 1.5 for a one-time debt service payment. If we use every bit of the fund balance, that number brings us down to 3.14%. I don't think we're going to use every bit of the fund balance this year, but it gives the board some flexibility. And if you reserve it, it doesn't count towards your 8%. When you reserve it, your unreserved is what the state looks at. It can't exceed 8%. So again, if I was standing here 2 years ago, I may have a different spin. The fact that S&P downgraded us, I think the district needs to do everything we can to try to get that rating point back up again before we do another borrowing, which could have a longer-term effect in interest earnings than a short-term effect.
How often do we get rated?
So anytime you go out for a borrowing, you get rated. If you haven't had a need for going out for borrowing, typically every 2 to 3 years. And honestly, it's a pop-up. I mean, it was a pop-up email. The last time we were rated was, our last bond issue was 2022. So it was about 2.5 years when they came knocking.
And then, so if we put money in a capital projects fund under the general fund, and then we want to use that money someday, that doesn't affect our rating?
You can reserve for capital projects. You have the flexibility to then unreserve it for capital projects if it stays within the general fund. It's money that stays within the general fund. Once you move it over to the capital projects fund, that's where it has to stay. That way, you're kind of living in the best worlds in both instances. It serves purpose two ways. So,
Did you say for, that we're currently at 8 point something percent of our unreserved?
that is, no, unreserved, let me
Total.
preface this, total was 8.24%. Unreserved was 2.7%. So we had reserves for, if you recall, debt service, 1.5 million. Again, this was at the end of 23-24, so we're utilizing 1.5 million this current year, so that's going to bring that reserve number down. And then we were projecting in this year's budget to utilize $200,000 for Peasers, $275,000 for healthcare, and then $175,000 for, we reserved it for compensated education. As a result of COVID, we thought we were going to have some exposure as it relates to special education, so we were offsetting some special education expenditures. So anytime you utilize your fund balance to balance a budget, you need to make up those dollars in the subsequent years. We were strategic last year when we had the ability under Act 1 to go to 5.3. We ended up at 4.01. To utilize some fund balance to help offset that tax increase. And remember, someone had a question for me today as it relates to tax increases, and the response was, oh, it's because of the new building. No, it's not because of the new building. We were able to borrow funds utilizing expiring debt to pay for the new high school. What was unforeseen as this project, as everyone sitting here on the board knows, was our enrollment continued to grow. And we also continue to hear of new developments in the township that necessitated keeping 4 buildings. So we needed to staff the 4 buildings. You know, we did that judiciously. Mrs. Drennan, Mr. Cole worked very hard on that, but there were some extra costs in there, and then obviously some extra operating costs, which we phased in last year and this year. But again, utilizing that fund balance, it's utilizing your savings to pay for groceries. So at some point, you got to continue to pay for groceries and your savings goes down. This is a potential opportunity for the board, again, as I said, to reset itself and set itself up for the future. And again, as we looked at Act 1 indices projected in the future, the base index next year is 3.6, I think, projected. Following year is 3.3, and the year after that is 3.2, I believe. It'll be challenging for all school districts. Again, Lower Moreland was a benefit. We had a big benefit of timing. I can tell you that right now. Let me go back to the Abington referendum. They're going to build a new middle school for $285 million. That's their budget. We got this done for 70. We were in a situation now, double this amount, triple this amount. And that's from the sound decisions of all the board members here and all the board members who preceded you. We've been able to address an immediate need, especially at Pine Road, as it relates to space. We have built ourselves for capacity for potential new developments, and we've been able to work on a long-standing school board goal of reducing class sizes in our elementary grades. And I think, Dr. Best, do we have those projected? class sizes?
While we wait for that, you mentioned earlier that if we were to utilize all fund balance, what would take us to 4 point something% rather than the 8% that you mentioned? Was it 785 or utilizing all fund balance?
I'm sorry, could you repeat
I
the
think
question?
earlier when you're describing what would take us
Oh,
down to
got,
4
okay.
percent.
Yeah, so in our current budget, in total, we were utilizing, I just had it. Sorry, a total of $3.1 million of fund balance. If we utilized all that fund balance, we would be left with 3% total fund balance and unreserved fund balance of about 1.15%. So I don't believe we're going to utilize all of that fund balance. Are we going to use some of, we're certainly using 1.5, that's a given. I don't think we're going to be utilizing 3 million of it. It's still early, not early, but it's early in closing out a school year on where we're going to be, but you're definitely going to eat into that fund balance in this current year. What this helps to do, if the board utilizes no fund balance next year, is kind of reset that. And I get it, I get it. It's certainly a tax increase. I get it. What's working, potentially working for the board is the board can raise the millage tax a certain amount. The real tax is actually a little bit less than that because of that increased homestead extension for the qualifying properties.
So on your slide 9 here, when you're saying the inflection from orange to green to allow for the yellow number to compensate for
Yep.
the shortfall, not using 785,000 of the fund balance, but we're still using some fund balance?
Utilizing none.
None, okay.
And if the board was so inclined to use some, I would suggest that you use at most, as I'm standing here today, 185. I would use 110, which we apply against there's actually a line item in the general fund called budgetary reserve. It's an expenditure line item that is there for unforeseen expenditures, and $75,000 of compensated education. If money were no object, I would say get to the green.
Mr. McGuinn, back on your point, sorry, Dr. Butler. Class size projections for next year: kindergarten 17 per class, first grade 18 per class, second grade 22 per class, and third grade 22 per class.
And those class sizes, before we made the move to 4 buildings, they were right at 25, and in fact, in certain rooms, we had to hire an instructional aide to offset when it went over, I think when we had 26 in a classroom. So in talking to Mrs. McMullen, and I'm sure Mr. Cole and Dr. Henrik can probably better address this, but anecdotally, she was telling me that they've had a lot less Title I intervention, a lot less behavior intervention. Feel free to chime in, guys, please.
That's correct, Mark.
Oh, thanks.
No, I agree. There have been a lot less, and there's also been a lot more support available for students who've come in not being in school before or with some needs that they weren't identified. Actually, Frank was talking about today some of the support that our students have been able to receive that they wouldn't have gotten in previous years.
Mr. Berardi.
I know we're trying to get through this calendar year, but
Fiscal year,
thank you. The Act 1 index is 4%, and we have the ability to go up to 6.05 using exceptions that most likely will not be there next year. And the Act 1 goes down to 3.
I think it's 3.6 off the top of my head.
3.6.
And that, again, that is based on the last projection. That's not a solid number.
I understand. So let's just assume it goes to that. How do we balance the budget next year?
So if you utilize no fund balance, then you potentially could utilize fund balance
Next year.
next year and subsequent.
So we're going to utilize it either this year or
In-
next year.
In addition, if you recall, what is down the line for Lower Moreland, for us? The remainder of the over 55, the phase-in, when it starts, of the Crescent Fields, the assisted living facility, and which will carry expenditures, I understand this, the building of the BET investment project. That will help to continue to raise your revenue assessment base, of which if your tax base is, if your tax millage is higher at that point, on a 4%, you raise your taxes here. I'll pick a number. 5%, your taxes are a little bit here. That number times your assessment is going to be obviously more, and as your assessment grows, it'll compound over the years. It'll continue to grow. The board, Lower Moreland Township School District Board of School Directors, has been very judicious as it relates to tax increases. We've been able to address the needs of the district, keeping at or within Act 1 indices. I would say, in answer to your question moving forward, this district, and I would say this to any district, you're probably going to need to go to the index every year to maintain the programs and the facilities that you have within your school district. Any given year, there could be a fluctuation of students moving in with special needs. Any given year, those same students could move out. It's hard. But where I would caution any school district, and I could tell you a local not local, in Bucks County, a district that went zero for multiple years is now feeling it right now. And they're looking at 5.9 or a 6% tax increase right now. And if they had done a 2, they would have gotten the same place. Unfortunately, I get it, and I'm feeling it in my district. I know that our taxes are going to go up. Everyone's expenditures are going up. Cost of living is going up. Those expenditures for a school district also go up at the same time.
So are you giving us all of those options?
I'm giving you selected options based on the Act 1 index of 4% and above. I didn't give you 6.05 because I gave you 6. What I would, if you're going to ask me what my recommendation would be, my recommendation is I think the school board and the district needs to reset itself as it relates to fund balance, and I think we need to address the structural deficit that we have, and I think we need to have revenues equal expenditures. And it would set the plate for the upcoming years as the Act 1 indices get leaner. Hang on one second.
Sure.
I can tell you, in the history of the Act 1 index, how low it has been. So when you ask how do we get through that, we have gotten through years where the base index, so let me give you in 2011-12, base index 1.4, 1.7 following year, 1.7 following year, 2.1, 1.9. Districts were able to address those needs at those times. Again, if your tax millage is higher, your base is higher, as the projected increases go down, you're in a better situation than, if we decide to utilize the remaining amount of our fund balance and the index is even lower next year, and you have no exception. That's the point where Dr. Best, Dr. Henrik, Mr. Cole, Mr. Giordano start looking at, okay, we're going to be increasing class sizes. We're going to be looking to cut programs. We're going to be in a situation where some districts are going to be. I hate to say that. I think this school district has done a very good job in managing what's been put forth for them. And I'll make it a soapbox piece again, as I have every meeting, I think, as I do the budget. What hamstrings Lower Moreland Township is the lack of industry. We just have no commercial base that produce no students, that are commercial to draw on. Crescent Fields will help. When Crescent Fields is fully assessed, by far, that'll be your largest taxpayer, by far. And that's difficult. If you look at, and that's, when you compare millage rates within the county, and you look at, well, why is Upper Marion so low? Why is Upper Marion so low? Bingo, King of Prussia Mall. Now that has its pitfalls as well. Post-COVID, they've seen a lot of assessment appeals. We haven't seen as much here because we just don't have the commercial industry. But when you have that type of industry to build upon, and it continues to grow, the township has done what they can to try to grow the commercial base along the Philmont Avenue corridor. And I know every application that they get, they're trying to, they get it, they're trying to entice commercial property development within the district.
Well, it's frustrating because the same residents that don't want their taxes to go up are the same residents that shoot down any type of commercial that wants to come into the township, so.
No comment.
You made a comment about being able, and I don't want to get too into the weeds with this, but you made a comment about being able to change the millage as opposed to raising taxes. Did I hear you say that correctly, or no? Okay.
No, raising taxes is changing the.
I understand.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, no.
Okay.
That's the only way you can effectively change the millage. So.
Hey, Mr. McGuinn, I apologize for coming in during your informative discussion.
Better late than
Thank
never.
you. So where do you estimate our percentage increase needs to be to get our total fund balance approaching 8%?
Well, I would recommend not doing that in 1 year. I mean, if you ask me that, I'd say utilize every bit of exception that you have at 6.05%. I'm standing here not saying to do that. I get it. I think it'll be a several years worth of slowly building that back up. So I can tell you, again, I'm going to show my age, and I also had a full head of hair when I got here. When I got here, the fund balance was a negative $1.5 million. We were in the hole. We were doing tax anticipation notes. We were paying a bank money to give to us early and backing it with the potential of our real estate collections. Over the years, we have built that fund balance to a advantageous position. In fact, at one point we were one of the very few districts of our size with a bond rating as high as it was. But that takes several years, and it takes several years of prudent budgeting, again, examining every expenditure that you can, looking for potential savings, and again, history lesson, and Mr. McKee will know this. When I got here, as it relates to our special education program, the only programs we ran in this district were learning support classrooms. Any student who had an emotional need or a need for autism we were sending those students out for out-of-district placements. The district at that time made a conscious decision to we wanted to bring those students back and be part of the community, part of the school. And we did that judiciously. You know, out-of-district placements cost, obviously, the cost of tuition, cost of transportation. We did a needs assessment as it relates to those students, and could we address those needs within our district, hire a teacher, hire an aide, save costs.
Just to rephrase the question then, where do you think our potential increase needs to be as the best first step towards restoring our fund balance close to 8% over the next few years?
Look to the green.
Where in that range?
I never want to come out and recommend a tax increase. I want to be able to have the district in a good place for my successor. I get it. It's difficult. Some of the reasons why we can go up as potentially as high is because we had large expenditures on the special education side. That's what qualified us for that exception. Those are monies that the district's already paid. In theory, if those expenditures weren't there, we wouldn't have the ability to raise taxes, which meant we probably didn't pay those expenditures, so our fund balance probably wouldn't have been affected as much. Again, we're beholden to anyone who knocks on our door. And I'll give another example of, this was a while ago, but district budget was passed in June. End of July, we had a family move in with 2 students with autistic needs that were out-of-district placements that were ballpark 6 figures each in tuition. We can't control that. We need to put safeguards in to try to insulate us for that. One of the ways to do that in any given year is to have money in the bank, fund balance in the bank. And when your fund balance gets too low, there's a lot of things that negatively that can happen to a school district. So this would be a good first step, is getting to the green.
So you're equating the exception that we're seeking almost as like a reimbursement for money that we spent? Okay. And then, so if we don't utilize any fund balance this year, right? And we have to use it next year, wouldn't that still affect our bond rating if we didn't get rated in the next year?
If you don't get rated, the next time your bond rating can be affected is when you get rated. So if they don't rate us next year, nothing happens to your bond rating. So I think one of the things that the folks who are on that next rating call can point to is, oh my God, McGuinn was using so much fund balance back in the day. We're now equating revenue and expenditures. We're not utilizing any fund balance to balance our budget. We're in a better position now, and projecting forward, we have Crescent Fields coming. We have BET investments coming. We have, hopefully the fully implemented over 55 community implemented here. The remainder of the next 3 years of phased in for the self-storage facility over on Philmont. You have built-in assessment growth coming. Those are all signs that you can point to, and they'll look for evidence, and we have all those schedules, and we send that to Standard & Poor's. The big thing, in my opinion, that will help is having a balanced budget, fixing the structural deficit.
Mark, are you done? Jennifer, I don't want to cut your time short. I'll get off the Abington thing real fast and ask my questions, but besides the fact that the building would have cost double or triple to build, we also had a blended interest rate because of the market at the time when we did it below, 2.5% on average, which Abington's not going to get that.
Right now, though, put it this way, the districts who are borrowing right now are borrowing 4.5.
Yeah. So-
Now, as the Fed, it's cyclical. If the Fed starts reducing the rate, in theory, long-term rates should also drop. Not necessarily, it doesn't
Right.
go hand in hand.
Right.
Similarly, if the Fed starts dropping the interest rates, obviously our interest rate earnings will go down. But what typically goes up at that time is your transfer tax, because everyone who's been waiting to sell their home or to buy a home does that at that point.
Right.
Homes in Lower Moreland are selling fairly high. I've seen on our assessment runs a heck of a lot more million-dollar sales in Lower Moreland than I've ever seen before. And from my understanding from realtors, they're still going fairly quickly.
Right.
And as I've said multiple times, nobody comes here for the shopping.
No. One thing that people should know, like, we've been under the Act One many years, like with Dr. David Heiser, Dr. Best's predecessor, we tried to be under Act One every year for what, Mark? 6 years
6
in a
years.
row?
Yep.
Five out of the 6 years? So it's kind of like, I guess what's that old expression? Eventually comes to the roost or something, and eventually happens. And I think maybe that's a little bit of what you're saying, is we've been under, and now we might have to
Yes and
change
no.
that.
Yes and no. And I'll say yes if everything, or I'm sorry, no if everything would have stayed the same. What happened?
For schools.
Dr. Henrik knows. Dr. Henrik's been here for 6 months. She's got it. The fourth building.
Yeah.
That really threw us for a loop.
Right.
And again, when we were looking at, 3 buildings, we were talking about configurations, and we were about 1.5 years into this project. And to this day, I still remember the meeting with Scott Cole. And if we moved only 5th grade, which was our original intention, out of Pine, and Pine was where the pressure point was. If we only moved 5th grade out of Pine, our building usage rate was still going to be 96, 97%. That's when we went, uh-oh, we need to relook at this thing. So if we did not have that 4th building, I think we would be having a very different discussion here. But like everyone in education does, and all my educators will marvel at this phrase, we monitored and adjusted our thinking. In doing so, and again, there was times at Pine where we wanted to do some things and we just couldn't. We were hamstrung by space. I can tell you, not only is the administration and the teachers very happy at Pine, Lower Moreland Police are very happy at Pine because we don't have the bus or the parent pickup going out onto the road at Pine Road. It's a better environment for kids, and at the end of the day, that's our product.
Right. I agree. So no special ed exception, you said, it's this year. Probably not going to see one again, right, for more than 3 years?
If you see one, it's not going to be this dollar amount.
Okay.
I can tell you that. And based on, you're looking at 2 years ago versus last year was our high number. That high number, you're not going to see an exception next year. You may see it once it resets itself.
Is it possible to see another exception with the state
The only
come out
other
with something?
exception really that we would qualify for, there's one, which is PESERS, but the PESERS rate has stabilized.
Okay.
So I don't foresee that, the district qualifying. That would need to, the differential in the rate, PESERS rate between 1 year and the next needs to exceed your Act One rate.
Okay.
I don't foresee that happening.
Okay.
Only other exception that a district could qualify for is do what they did over in Abington
Referendum.
and have a referendum.
Okay.
Anecdotally, I think there's going to be a lot of school districts that are going to copy that model and try to do it because Whereas, as I said, this building was 70 million, or middle school. They're utilizing cost per square foot of, I talked to the Abington business manager today, almost $500 per square foot. I don't know how schools are going to do it without utilizing that potentiality. And that's usually, that's the third one, I believe, in the state that's passed.
Yeah.
It's been Abington, Upper Dublin, State College.
I remember at MCIU with you, it was last year, and you raised your hand about just the state funding schools more, because I think, isn't Pennsylvania like on the very low end of the
They are.
the lower
And
48 states?
Governor
We're
Shapiro-
42nd in the nation.
42nd. And I think we're outspent by like, yeah, never mind. I don't
Well,
wanna mention
and
any
Governor
names.
Shapiro made good inroads last year. He's a bit limited this year. However, if we are able to see some statewide cyber charter school reform.
Right.
Again, for us, it's 200,000. For William Penn School District, 2 million. And that's not the state raising revenue at all. It's just having districts pay a statewide rate as opposed to what they pay now.
Right.
Which is based on their own expenditures. And based on where some of those cyber charters fund balances are, $45 million, pretty high.
Yeah. Thank you, Mark.
So I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but I need some direction.
Mr. McKee, did you have a question or a comment?
I just want to understand this a little bit better. Your recommendation moving forward is a balanced budget.
Correct.
But as Act One goes down, we're going to be squeezed tighter and tighter.
Correct.
Is there any good news in terms of the real estate taxes from those developments
Yes.
moving forward?
Yes.
Potentially-
Yes, those assessments will continue to add to your overall district assessment. Again, the over 55 coming all the way to fruition, not utilizing assumptions. The Crescent Fields across from Wawa, having that start their LERTA phase-in. And then obviously the BET investment property, which again will bring expenditures because it'll bring students. But that'll be a big total district assessment increase as well. If your tax rate is higher, as those potential tax increases get lower, you can still raise it a little bit more than if you didn't raise it as high now.
Just one quick one with the interim taxes.
Yeah,
You used a low number of 250,000 and 6 months.
yeah.
Looking ahead, ideally, if all 174 sell in there, are we looking at real estate taxes from that development?
So, very good question. So I'll answer that with two separate answers. If your scenario comes to fruition, and that $899, if you double, you have an extra $900,000. That immediately goes to fund balance. And, again, these are one-time revenue sources that will be backfilled. You don't lose them. It just changes from transfer tax and interim tax to regular real estate tax. So, yes.
So it's kind of a sliding scale on this.
Correct. And, again, as I continue to drive through the over 55 development, it's slow and steady. They're still going up. They're still going, selling. And the county is a couple months behind. I can tell you of the three I forget how many they added this month, but one of them is backdated to March. So those interim taxes will be from March, and then that gets added to a full year for 25, 26. So again, all those runs are, not only do we get the assessment run, but our tax collector, Mrs. Sale, gets those, and she is very on top of sending those interim tax bills out as soon as possible, because she likes to see those getting collected as well.
And the second answer?
Well, that was the second one.
Oh, okay.
A double fund balance was one, and secondly, it rolls into real estate taxes. You got it.
So, Mr. Nguyen, you were about to tell us what direction you needed from the board.
So when I say look to the green, so let me give you a couple options. If we're looking at green, I'll give you two options. Well, I'll give you three options. If we raise tax millage 5%, for an average taxpayer, it's only 4.63%. If the board is inclined to raise taxes 5% for an average taxpayer, that actually would be more like 5.25%, because their tax bill would go up 4.89%. So, as a fallback, I would say 5. As a recommendation, I would say potentially 5.25, or anywhere in between. But we are right now at the point where the administration needs to build the rest of the budget for approval on June 17th.
May I ask, if we were to raise it 5 as opposed to 5.25, would the potential savings or contribution, or I'm sorry, basically, would it make enough of a difference to start to replenish the fund balance? In other words, is that just the bare minimum just to break this?
So between 5 and 5.25, you're talking about $110,000. It's a nice little, moving toward it. What it also does is further insulates you if the 1.5 million, the yellow number, doesn't all come in next year. All indications are it will. But if it doesn't, you're insulated by that.
Mark, how much of that 1.5 million, well, I guess it's right above it, right? So it's assuming all the properties come online?
All the properties, all the remaining properties settle within the time frame of,
Fiscal
for
year.
line item number 1. Doesn't matter how many months, you have for a transfer tax. A transfer tax you pay once when the house settles. So that is 166 properties, which is actually less than that. Again, in this scenario, I didn't include here. It's actually 164. We had 2 more come in the other day. But those are, I can tell you they're still way behind in what they have, because there's a lot more than 12 properties occupied right now.
I
So,
was told 31 homes have sold so far.
yeah, and so far, we've gotten 12.
Well, right.
So anytime those properties sell for budget purposes, between July of 2025 and June of 2026, we'll see that revenue here. The interim taxes would be couching it. Yes, all the properties would sell, but I'm only incorporating 6 months' worth of their taxes. So I'm giving a little bit of leeway. Some will settle more, and that's why my number of 250 is conservative here. And what's also conservative here is it won't be this millage rate, which is the current year millage rate. It'll be whatever the millage rate is that we settle on.
And Mark, that would also mean we're keeping $785,000
That is correct.
in our account.
That is correct.
So that's
That further
immediately
insulates you.
staying in the fund balance.
That's correct. And fixes the structural deficit moving forward.
Is there any way to have a scenario where we don't use any of the exception?
If you don't use any of the exception, you're here at 4%. So you would be utilizing, this number already exceeds this number by 360,000. If you utilize your fund balance here of 785, still not fixing your structural deficit, you potentially have $500,000 that could potentially come in more than what you've budgeted for.
So what I hear from your detailed explanation, what sounds like to me the most truly fiscally responsible decision to make long-term for the district is coming in somewhere between 5 and 5.25. 5.25 gives us a little extra buffer, keeps the real increase under 5%. To me, that seems like the most reasonable place to land.
I'm not having warm and fuzzy up here. I don't like presenting this, but again, it's addressing two things. It's addressing that large special education fluctuation, as well as the fourth building, which we talked about last year. And remember, Act 1 was 5.3 last year. We passed a budget at 4.01.
Mark, if we went between 5 and 5.25, and your numbers were conservative, and we ended up having more, could that potentially be a benefit that would go back to the taxpayers in future budgets? Could it reduce taxes?
Well, I would never recommend reducing taxes. What that gives you, though, is flexibility to utilize judiciously for fund balance. If you know you have a one-time expenditure coming, or you know you have something that you can foresee that's going to be a 1 or 2 year program and then it's going to go back, you can utilize fund balance that potentially you wouldn't have to raise taxes for.
I guess
that
I shouldn't
specific
say
thing.
reduce, right? Rather than go above the Act 1 index in the
Correct.
future.
And to your point, if more money comes in than what we're projecting here, adds to fund balance, the next rating, potentially your bond rating comes up, and then you've saved taxpayers over the next 25 to 30 years on potential interest costs. One other thing that if I've tried to teach the board nothing else, I will continue to preach this. And it's almost like we're always going to be leasing a car. We have a debt service line in our budget. After we did the big bump this year of 1.5, which we had fund balance for, it's going to remain at about 4.5 million. Never, ever get rid of that line. You're going to pay your debt service. At some point, you're paying off your bond issues. At that point, you build in back. If you get rid of your debt service, you're never, ever going to get it back. I know it's an odd concept, but it's almost like you're always leasing a car, as opposed to having a car payment, drop it, and then when you try to buy a new car, you don't have the ability to raise taxes because you're limited by Act 1.
So Mark, again, I can't help but keep thinking of next year. So if next year were this year, obviously, we just wouldn't be able to balance the budget.
We would be having we wouldn't be standing here on June 3rd having these discussions. We would be having a lot different discussions as we got to this point. We would be looking at programs. We would be looking at class sizes. We would be looking at potentially deferring things. Yeah. And again, as I said, the district did go through a period, 1.7, 1.7. Those are very low indices. But again, if your tax rate is higher and you're increasing at 1.7 on a higher number, it's going to potentially generate more dollars than if you're at a lower number.
Where can I get where is the best place to take a look at the budget?
You can come into my office.
Yeah. Okay.
Or look at my notebook.
We'll talk afterwards. Is there something specific that we've added this year that is causing the budget to be so high?
Hold on, I can show you. Let me go to, budget information. This is our proposed final budget, so it's going to look a little different, obviously. But there's one slide in here. Okay. If you look at this slide, $1.2 million. Thank you, Greg. In up top are items that were added during 24-25 that we didn't budget for. One was a night custodian at the middle school that we didn't think about. I'll be perfectly honest with you. It should have been in the budget. And then, if you recall, based on caseloads at Pine Road, we needed to add a special education teacher. Down below are items, obviously, that we're increasing in the budget, but we're increasing based on costs that we're already incurring right now. So we have behavioral services that are exceeding our budget. So we're kind of resetting things. We have, in addition with special education aides, we have a out-of-district tuition. Student moved in this year that I'm covering this year, but then I need to increase for next year. So $1.22 million right there is items that are hitting our budget that was not expected. Now, are we going to need another night custodian? No. Do we foresee a need for more teachers? Right now, we do not. But could that be a factor in the next 1 to 2 years as enrollment continues to increase? Remember, our enrollment has plateaued right now. I think we're in a holding pattern. That's going to grow, obviously, with the BET investment. And then, obviously, some of the other things right there. Data warehousing, that's some curriculum initiatives that are kind of, we're setting the number in there to build it in. But those are, again, directly related to kids, trying to enhance the performance of our product.
Are these the only new items that are added for 24, 25, 26?
26, yep. Those are the big factors. I mean, there are some increases based on trend, but these are the big hitters. What's not foreseen here is, but shown elsewhere. Uh-oh, that's not good. Greg, help me out. Let me get there. Next one. There we go. Let's see. Let me increase this. 19% increase in healthcare. $700,000. It's another big hitter. And this, let me roll back to our mandated costs. Here's our mandated or fixed costs. These are things that we have to pay, either by contracts or by state mandate. So we're talking about, in the bottom line, 94% of our budget, for the most part, is fixed. Up top, it's about 91.5, but that's not including things like this 1.6 million for, trash removal costs, water, sewer costs, that if we don't pay, I don't think we can operate. So, again, thanks to Mrs. Baker for the suggestion. We were able to go back and try to affect some of the things and defer some of the building level purchases. Principals have done a very good job. Commend all 4 of them. They've done a great job. It's really the impact of that 4th building.
So, Mr. McGuinn, are you asking the board for a specific number?
I'm going to need a number that we can build upon.
Okay. I mean, I personally would echo Dr. Butler's comments in the sense of I interpret your strong recommendation for long-term planning, reduction of structural deficit, replenishing fund balance of 5.25. So, I welcome other board members' comments, but we need to take some number to next meeting's resolution.
I guess I have another question. So the average assessment monthly increase is based on a person paying how much in taxes? So let's say someone pays $10,000 in taxes a year now. What would this look like for them?
So it's, if an average,
Does that make sense? Like, what would that number look like for them?
hold on.
You have to remember, it's just school tax, though. It's not the
Correct,
township tax.
just school tax.
Keep in mind.
So an average taxpayer currently pays about 80, I'll round off, $8,200. So $8,200 would be increased in the scenario of, say, 5.25 by another $399.
Do you have any information on what that, like, what does the highest school tax bill look like?
Well, the highest school tax bill is probably Philmont Country Club right now. I'm not sure.
I mean,
what
for a homeowner.
For a homeowner, there are some homes that are assessed at $750,000, $800,000, so they're going to be big taxes, but they're already paying big taxes. Again, it's a percentage of what they're paying now. And the reason we broke it down to monthly, as I mentioned, a lot of folks have a mortgage, and it's, added to their escrow, and that's the impact. And again, if you look at the difference, if we're just talking between, say, for example, 5 and 5.25, we're talking about $22 for an average taxpayer. Whereas for us, it's potentially $110,000 of tax revenue.
Dr. Lee, if you're looking for others to chime in, since we could potentially bring the fund balance back up by the 785 that we don't use, plus the extra, say, $200 and $10,000. If your number's right, 1.5, it's coming in, and
If, at the 5.25 number.
so we could almost add about $1 million to the fund balance if
Well,
your
no,
numbers are
you're
correct.
adding 210, because the 785 you already have.
Okay,
Yeah.
it's staying there, but
Correct. You're not utilizing.
we're not utilizing it.
Correct.
Yeah, I mean, we have, you mentioned last year, it was 5-something, we went 401, which is,
Act 1 was 5.3.
so we were,
We went 4.01.
yeah. And then
And
years
remember-
before, I'm sure if you told us years before, it wouldn't be maybe 0.2 like that, or 2.5, it would be closer to,
We were closer to the Act 1%. Now, again, the 5.3 historically was the highest Act 1 percentage.
right, right. And it's going to go down each
It's
year.
projected to go down.
Which is
for
why
the-
it's
the
probably
projections that
important.
we have are for this year plus the next 3
Yeah.
years.
I mean, Jim, I would support what you said, if that's what you're asking, yeah.
I will echo one last time, I'm not a happy camper being up here. I get it. It's difficult. I will also say that there are districts that are going even higher than that number. I've heard, not necessarily in Montgomery, but in Bucks, 5.9. There are other districts that their Act 1 index is adjusted based on their relative wealth and their aid ratio. So, for example, surprising, because I heard this fact today and I looked it up. Our Act 1 index is what's called a base index. So for us, it's 4%. My successor, our colleague in Jenkintown, Their Act One percentage is actually 4.6%, because their aid ratio is over 0.4. Our aid ratio right now is 0.38. It's a measure of relative wealth and assessment in your district. It's a market value, personal income aid ratio. And it's been slowly going up. If, in some future year, if Lower Moreland gets over 0.4, the index may be adjusted. And that's something that's not done by a school district, that's done at the state level.
So not every district has the same Act One index?
No,
Oh, I did
no,
not know
those,
that.
the graduated index, there's some districts, the districts that are, that the state considers relatively poor, I believe that index for this year, it goes all the way up to 5.8. Those are districts that typically rely more on state funding, so just
So-
something for future use.
Mr. McGuinn, one of the factors, if I'm not mistaken, is inflation that gets factored into the Act One, is that correct?
So inflation, it's part of it. It's, Act
one of-
One is a measure of, let me get it right. So it's a measure of the increase in the statewide average weekly wage rate. So wages that everybody makes, and the employment cost index for elementary and secondary schools. So it's a reflection of what schools pay. So as the index goes down, the costs for elementary and secondary schools tends to go down. It goes hand in hand. Where you've seen where those numbers went up here, 4.1, 5.3, was the wage rates in those years went up in Pennsylvania. Think about seeing some of the help wanted signs at McDonald's for $17 an hour versus, state minimum wage is still $7.25. If that wage rate is increased, which I know that's one of the governor's initiatives, you may see this number go up. But again, the projections that we have are from the independent fiscal office, and they're taking all those kinds of considerations into effect.
I mean, technically, if what happens to the Fed, and they don't know if it goes up or down or what they're going to do, but wouldn't that affect, could they restructure the Act One if things are so out of kilter because if there are shortages
That
on
would take a
things?
legislative change in Pennsylvania. And if you think about it, what's really odd to me is the Fed, during COVID, dropped the rate to 0. Look at the Act One index lags by about 2 years. Look at the rates that happened after COVID. It was an inverse thing. Because the rates were so low, you were able to buy more, which drove the weekly wage rate up, which in turn drove the elementary and secondary costs up as well. And lastly, a factor of the elementary and secondary costs going up was all the federal grants, the federal revenue that was infused into the economy. Now we see that's been pulled back. So again, that's factoring into the independent fiscal office of shrinking those projections for the Act One rate.
So, as I wait, any other comments? Mr. Gwynn, I'd like to take an opportunity to thank you for walking us through this process over the past several months. I think you've detailed expenditure budgets, everything along every step, and I feel the most educated I can be at this point for school budgeting processes, so thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Lee. Again, I'll say it as many times as I can. I'm not happy being up here, but I do think this sets the district in a good standing moving forward, as all districts are going to be going into some lean times. And we all know that as we're trying to do our multi-year projections.
So do you have sufficient direction for next?
My direction is having a millage rate that equates to an increase of 5.25%. And that's how we will present the budget. If you recall, so the budget process will be adopting the full budget. It will be setting the millage rate for Mrs. Sale to collect. It'll also be adopting the homestead, farmstead resolution, so that our programmer who works on our tax bills can accurately then take those homestead assessment reductions for each qualifying property. So you'll see that. Once the budget is passed, we will post the full budget, which is 100 some pages, onto our website, which details revenues and expenditures and tries to give as much detail as we can. And again, as I mentioned, as I referred to here, this is just a snippet of it, but it tries to give as much common sense information to folks as opposed to putting the state budget report up there, which is just numbers and codes and doesn't mean anything to anybody. Thank you very much, and I apologize for the length.
Thank you. We'll move on to our superintendent's update. Dr. Best?
I will make this very brief. Just one more reminder, tomorrow night we have our program, Digital Kids Inform Parents, Let's Talk Cell Phones. We're partnering with professional learning partnerships to help educate parents and students around the brain science behind cell phone use and what is good and what is not. The evening will run from 6 to 8 p.m. tomorrow night at the high school.
Great, thank you, Dr. Best. We'll move on to personnel. Ms. Galdo, the personnel motions 1A.
Certainly. So at the high school, we're recommending Bridget McShane as a temporary professional employee English teacher. She's at class 4, step 1, and this will start with the next school year. We're also recommending Braden Mulcahy as a long-term substitute for, music teacher at Murray Avenue in the middle school. This is for the band position, and he's at class 1, step 1. And this is for the entire school year next year. Change of status, we have Jennifer McGuigan. We're recommending her to move to the elementary instructional coach position. She's currently in the IST Dean of Students position. And under other new hires, we have 2 WinCamp teachers and a bus monitor. A number of substitute clerical staff and substitute nurses are being recommended for next school year. And then we also have several unpaid leave requests.
Thank you. Any comments or questions? If not, we'll move on to item B, the lead technology assistant job description.
Yep. So Mr. Patel has recommended that we have a new position, lead technology assistant, and that the job description is in the board docs. And this position would be, it would still have responsibility for school technology assistant responsibilities, but it would also troubleshoot for the other technicians and help to coordinate their work. It would have a salary of $55,000 for next school year.
And this was intended to be internally?
Yes, we'll post it internally, yes.
Any comments or questions?
So does that mean we already have someone that we're paying a salary to, and it's just a difference
Correct.
in this new title?
Correct, yes, it represents a slight increase for one of the technicians.
With increased responsibilities?
With increased
Yes.
responsibilities, yes.
Any other comments? Item C, the Bayada agreement.
So we've been working with Bayada, a nursing agency, since 2014. They help cover if one of our school nurses is out, but they also help us with field trips for students who have medical needs who go on a field trip We couldn't do it with the number of field trips we have, especially this time of year. We couldn't do it without them, so they're very useful. And it's a 2-year agreement and representing a slight increase in hourly rates.
I would also recommend wholeheartedly Mrs. Galdo's recommendation. In addition to the services, they also provide daily services for our special needs, transportation that is dictated by students' IEP. They have been terrific, and it's a peace of mind for the parents as well as for the school district.
Any comments or questions?
Just, Mrs. Galdo, when you say slight increase, what are we talking about? 2%, 3%? Do you know? What?
It's 2%.
2? Okay, thanks.
Thank you. The item D, STS agreement.
So this is a 2-year agreement with the STS. We've had a relationship with them for 13 years to provide our substitute teachers, the bulk of our paraprofessionals, and some security staff. With them being on site this year, it's made it a more, they've always been a good partner, but they've become just excellent this year with being on site and especially providing a paraprofessional liaison, given the number of paraprofessionals we have in the district. Someone to interact, liaison between the company and the district has just been an enormous help. So I'm very pleased to recommend this extension of the contract for 2 more years.
Thank you. Any comments or questions?
Quick question. It's a 2-year contract,
Yes.
but the increase rate is all in the first year.
Yes. So
We talked at all about spacing that over the 2 years?
Well, what we'll normally do is we did give an increase for next year, and then based on the budget for next year, we'll go back to them and say, we'd like to do an addendum to this existing agreement once we see what the budget and what increases we can give next year.
Is the amount, the percentage of increase individually bargained? It just,
No, we
some
give
are
it-
25%, 31%. I just was wondering.
Yeah, so it's a across-the-board 4% increase, but the rates the markup rates that STS, that they put on position is determined by STS. So they do have, for a professional, it's a little bit lower than a substitute teacher, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, their markup rate includes things like they'll cover workers' compensation, unemployment compensation. Those folks who work for these companies can claim unemployment for the summertime, as well as some of they incur all their benefit costs. So their share of Social Security, any other those types of things. That's the difference. That's where the markup comes from.
Mrs. Gale, I have a question concerning the SES personnel. Have we had any feedback from teachers saying anything about the quality of the personnel that's sent to the schools?
Sometimes we do. Very rarely, maybe once or twice a year, we'll get reports to say, please don't have this substitute return to the school. I'll fill out an evaluation form and submit that feedback to the STS, and they'll contact the individual and talk about the situation, and then not have them return to the school. So, but that's very rare.
So you would say it's a small percentage?
Yeah, small percentage. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thanks. Any other comments or questions? If not, item E, the U.S. medical agreement.
Yes, we've been working with U.S. Medical since 2016. They also provide a few, less a number than STS, but they do provide a few paraprofessionals. Sometimes we go to them for substitute nurses if Beata can't find a substitute nurse on a given day, and also substitute teachers. So this is like a backup, to our other main agencies. They also represent a 4% increase in their rates.
Thank you. Any comments or questions? Not lastly, the GHR agreement.
Right. So GHR is a 1-year agreement, and as with U.S. Medical, this is like a backup to STS and Beata, providing paraprofessionals, substitute nurses, and substitute teachers. They also have a 4% increase in their agreement.
Thank you. Any comments or questions?
Scott, I have one quick question. I believe the personnel had to sign an agreement that they would not divulge personal information about children that they work with and
Right.
things like that. Do we still do that?
Yes, we still do that. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Galdo. We'll move on to agenda item 5, teaching, learning, and community engagement. Mr. Cole, could you take us through items A through D?
Yes, we only have one request for a professional meeting this month. It's for Emily Wicks to attend a supporting long-term English learners session at the IU.
Comments or questions? Thanks. Item B.
Item B is a renewal of the Master Teacher online platform. You may recall at our last Act 48 round, not this year, but the year prior, one of the requests that came from teachers was the ability to access really differentiated PD based on their really specific needs. Master Teacher was the solution that we posed to the board at that time. It's been very successful. In addition to offering differentiated PD opportunities for our professional staff, we've been utilizing the platform a lot this year to meet the requirement for paraprofessional development that is state mandated, and Master Teacher offers a nice opportunity for us to fulfill that mandatory obligation. Please note that this is the same cost as last year's agreement, so there has not been an increase. Thanks.
I think the board motion cover sheet under that agenda item B is incorrect. It's the GSE, if you click it, it's the GSE Catalyst Core.
Oh, okay, we'll have to look into that.
The board motion cover sheet. Am I correct? Oh, maybe I need to reload my screen, sorry. Okay, any comments or questions? Yeah, okay. If not, we'll move to item C, the student handbook updates.
We have provided the 4 schools' handbooks. Murray and Pine do not have any changes. The middle school had minor changes related to athletics eligibility and student arrival at school, and they made their processes match the high school because that's, PIAA sports. They also, the middle school took the bus code of conduct and incorporated it into the overall school code of conduct. The high school revised their academic integrity expectations and added the work that they've done with cell phones so that now students and parents are aware that cell phones are not permitted during class time, and they better articulated the permissions for college visits. Juniors and seniors can go 3 days per year, and if they need additional days, they just have to speak with their building principal or assistant principal prior to the visits.
Other comments or questions? Sorry, I missed it. What was the language regarding athletic eligibility?
Sorry, say it again, please.
What was the additional information regarding
So
athletics?
at the middle school, they did not have an expectation that, they didn't have it articulated that you had to be in school or be in school for a certain amount of time in order to participate in sports. So now they've clearly articulated that with the understanding that if you have a doctor's appointment, a funeral, something along those lines, you're excused, but you can't show up at school at 1:30 so you can leave for a softball game at 1:45. You actually have to be in school.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other comments or questions?
On eligibility, is it still the same where the passing is halfway through the marking period? They don't start in week 1 with eligibility.
So at the high school level, the PIAA rules say that if you are failing at the end of the marking period, you are out for 15 school days. And then after that, it goes week to week. At the middle school, they're using week to week.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions about the handbooks? And lastly, item D, the Penn GSE Catalyst Core team membership.
Yes, so this is a proposal to renew our agreement with Penn. This is the group that led the Penn Catalyst students, so the LMTSD Catalyst students who have been working within schools this year to increase belongingness. You'll note that the $2,000 actually marks a decrease from the cost this year because we lapsed in our partnership with them. I needed to engage in a $700 training last year. I will not need to do that this year, so the functional cost will actually be $700 less than last year's. cost.
Any comments or questions for Mr. Cole? Thank you. No items for buildings and grounds. And then we'll move to business and finance. Mr. McGuinn, can you take us through items A through D, please?
Sure. We have the accounts payable checklist dated 5/27 and the amount shown. If anyone has any questions. Item B always gets a laugh. And Mrs. Kepner always asks me every year if that's the right date for the attached memo dated May 8th, 1979. Essentially, this is giving the authorization for the business office to do year-end budget transfers. If you recall, we do those budget transfers in either September or early October as in preface to the budget, of the audit. So that is the blanket authorization to do that after June 30th. Item C is a resolution for the district because there is no scheduled July public meeting of the board. This authorizes the administration to continue to make disbursements, pay bills, approve personnel transactions, resignations, so on and so forth, all of which would then be retroactively approved at our August meeting. So this allows Mrs. Galdo, Dr. Best, and company to do all the hirings through the summer, and then those folks are brought forward during our August meeting. And lastly, item D is the annual approval of our financial institutions. We work with Wells Fargo Bank and the Pennsylvania Local Government Investment Trust, or PLGIT.
Thank you, Mr. Gwynn. Mr. McGuinn, any comments or questions for items A through D from the board? If not, we'll move to agenda item 9, technology. Mr. Patel, can you take us through items A and B, please?
Yes. So over the last month or so, the technology department conducted a walkthrough to identify requirements to perform a refresh of classroom technology at the middle school. This was very helpful to identify unique constraints to be considered as part of the refresh cycle. And as an example, limitation of placement of new projectors in existing spots. So if you've been in the middle school classroom, the projectors are about 5 feet away from the wall. The new projectors would be about 1 feet off of the wall. So it's much closer to the wall. So some of the impediments could be the clock or vent and so forth. So we wanted to identify some of the constraints that we would be dealing with. And so through this process, we were able to outline our needs to be able to successfully perform the upgrades prior to the start of the school year. Each of the middle school classroom will be equipped with a new Epson laser projector and a 100-inch board. With this upgrade, K through 12 classrooms will have a uniform instructional technology, providing our teachers and staff to use technology with familiarity as it pertains to connectivity and features. There are a few items that are being worked out in this quote. In particular, our 4-year lease with our financing partners. We expect to have our leasing terms finalized soon, and will be available for review prior to the June 17th board meeting. I'll take any questions that you may have.
Mr. Patel, the projectors, are they adhered to the wall, or are they mobile?
They'll be on the wall.
Okay, is there any reason why we wouldn't go to a mobile? Because I know that they're easier to move around into classrooms that aren't used and things like that, and it really does allow the room to be used in a different way if it's not attached to the wall.
So you're talking about having projectors like on a cart. So
Correct,
some of the projectors that we would be removing, we would keep them for those kind of purposes. So we wouldn't necessarily be discarding all 45 projectors. So we would keep some.
So we can use the same technology with the existing projectors?
Yeah.
Then why would we be removing them to begin with?
These projectors are also reaching their shelf life as well. So if we were to keep them, what would happen next year is we would be doing a lot of maintenance work on them, and that would be draining as well for us.
So it's like an ancillary, they're ancillary? Yeah. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Patel, is this a one-time hit to the budget? You said 4-year lease. I was confused by that.
So all of our major tech projects that we have in place are all done through a leasing company. And so this payment that you see in that quote would be spread over a 4-year period of time.
Spread over 4 years?
Correct.
Excellent. And I have faith in you that we're getting the best price possible, correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I had a little discussion with Mr. Patel, so yes, we are.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Any other questions for item A? If not, item B, please.
All right, and the next item that I have is regarding cybersecurity. So in my communication via the board reports, I provided information regarding our recommendation to work with CCIU and Rubric to support the district in providing backup data service. Working with the CCIU and Rubric will provide us a stronger cybersecurity posture to protect us in the event of. The board report I shared included specific capabilities that you'll find of value and features we would be able to leverage using this platform. I'll take any questions you may have at this time.
Is this an annual cost?
Yes.
Okay. And we're using Chester County Intermediate Unit because Montgomery County doesn't have this service?
So CCIU has the consortium pricing agreement with Rubric. That's why we're going with
Okay.
them.
Got it, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Patel.
Thank you.
I'll take us to school board agenda items. First is student club proposals. As listed, you'll see new clubs as listed and continuing clubs as well with descriptions of each.
Dr. Best, could you just, I know this is year one was approved already, but could you just explain the Young Medical Club and why are they so enthusiastic?
Outside of their love of medicine, this club has run intermittently during the time in between, but was never board approved beyond year one. So the way that our system is currently set, annual approval is required. So that's why we're seeing year two so far lagging from year one.
Thank you.
Dr. Best, I see we're going to start a new Ukrainian Student Association, and there's already a club in this year two, which is Eastern European, which also includes Ukrainian students. So I was just, wondering if, there's going to be enough participation in both. There won't be competition for the same students to join the clubs, and it would create a problem that way.
Sure. We see the obvious overlap,
Yes.
but we also recognize a desire for a separate club for that one group.
Okay.
I don't anticipate it being an issue. Ultimately, clubs, they live or die based on student participation. So I think that's why we have the system set the way that we do, that they'll have to go through multiple years to basically, if you think of Shark Tank, prove the concept.
Right.
Before we make it a paid endeavor. So
Okay.
if it dies on the vine, it dies on the vine. If not, it's a viable
Okay, thank
club.
you.
Any other questions on the student club proposals? If not, we'll move to item B, which is retroactive approval for an overnight trip for esports to the PIEA Esports State Finals. Any comments or questions?
How did we do? Anybody know?
Anyone know?
Dr. Best, how do we do? Are we state champions in esports too?
I am hopeful we are. I'm still awaiting a full report from Mr. Dominic, but when we have that, we will share out.
Did they get their snacks?
No, I ensured they did not.
Yeah, I believe that's part of esports culture. Yes.
Okay. Items C, D, E, and F are the ICS proposed contracts and bid packages. Some are quite long, but I would direct the board to the cover letters, which has the recommendations that were described to us this evening, as well as any, as I interpreted, any additional items that they elected to add on or not add on as directed and discussed with Mr. McGuinn and Dr. Best. So again, I think some of these, especially one of them was 170 pages. I think it listed a lot of their past work in neighboring districts. But Again, the detail, should you require it, as well as members of our public, is here if you're interested in the bids. But part of what we contracted ICS to do is to do this legwork and make the decisions out of the multiple bids that are detailed and that they received. So at this point, I'll take any comments or questions the board would like to raise on these
Just
four.
one other item.
Yeah, please.
Dr. Lee, was the 3 of the 4 packages were done via state contract. The chiller project at Pine and Murray Avenue was actually a publicly bid project. So they went both ways. I can tell you that the ICS folks were very pleased, as I said before, with the number of bidders and the quality of bidders. And again, the spread was pretty close, so it was a competitive marketplace.
Thanks. I think that's reassuring as well. So thanks for that overview. Any other comments or questions about the bid packages to be voted on next meeting? If not, move to public comment. Do we have any public comment this evening?
Nobody has signed up, Dr. Lee.
Okay.
Hold on.
Oh, sorry.
I think we skipped discussion and
My apologies.
I assume there's no correspondence. But I'm sorry to call you back, Mark, but I think I'd like to just talk about a couple more budgetary things again. I guess I'd just like to look at what other options there are besides going up to 5.25%. For example, if we looked at the potential tax increase of 4.5% with a real percentage of 4.09, we would be closer to the actual Act 1. And what would that look like with maybe using some of the fund balance? Right? Like, how would that look?
Well, again, it would depend on how much fund balance you would want to use. In this scenario, utilizing the 4.5% number, this is if we utilize no fund balance and this number, 1.6, if no fund balance is used, if we would need to collect about $100,000, $130,000 more in projected future revenue to meet that number. Otherwise, we would be dipping into some of the fund balance that we would be utilizing, not utilizing. See, if we utilize a certain amount of fund balance, that decreases this number, but also does not then give you the balanced budget. So.
I think that's something that I would be willing to consider, or that I would be willing to hear more about, based on the fact that it's a tax increase of only $40 a year instead of $110. And I realize that, like, over, you know, when you split that up, it's not that much, but to a taxpayer, it could be.
So in order to get to that, it would be utilizing about 130,000 of fund balance? Is that what you're saying?
We potentially could, yeah. I mean, it's a fact, you have a couple moving things. You're utilizing some fund balance while certainly, making some assumptions on revenue. It's within the board's purview.
Isn't the assumption on revenue already built into the 5 or 5.25 approach as well?
Yes, it is,
Right.
but it's giving you a little bit of leeway based on the conservative assumptions. If those conservative assumptions don't necessarily all come true, you're not utilizing fund balance to start with, you have fund balance to fall back on. So in Ms. Cannon's example, you would have less of a fund balance to fall back on because you're utilizing some to balance your budget. Make sense?
No, I know what you're saying. It's basically saying we're going to use fund balance up front as opposed to as a backup plan.
Correct.
Right. The assumption is built in any of these scenarios. That
Correct.
1.521 is not
correct.
a guaranteed number in
That's
any scenario. Right.
Absolutely. The reason why I was looking toward the green is because it gives you a buffer to fall back on. And if it does come to fruition it automatically then further builds your fund balance. You're not utilizing the 785 or any part of your fund balance, and then could build on that.
My concern is not so much the dollar amount as Ms. Cannon has referenced, it's the compounding effect, right, that we've talked about so many times. It's that compounding over the next, 5, 10, 15 years. The difference between 4 and 5 1/4 doesn't sound like much until it's compounded down the road, and you take a look at it 5 years and 10 years from now, and it turns out to be like a 10% increase as opposed to a 1 1/4. So
Understood.
I also would be inclined to using some fund balance to try to keep that at a reasonable increase as opposed to one of our highest increases in the last
Understood.
25 years. So.
Understood. The administration needs direction.
I think the idea of saving roughly $60 per household a year, at the same time risking further bond degradation, it's not a good bet. I think you're risking much more for the average taxpayer by doing that. What we previously had suggested.
The bond degradation could still happen next year, though. Keep that in mind. Could not go up in the next year.
Certainly, anything can happen. I think we're looking at what we think is fiscally the most, to save, nobody wants to pay taxes, right? We all want to pay the least amount. But as has been outlined, clearly, our township is a desirable place because we go over and above as much as we can for our students. And I don't think shortchanging them a few dollars here is going to help them more in the long run. I think it's going to harm them more in the long run.
I kind of see this as our one opportunity to balance out the fund balance.
As I
And
mentioned.
we're not going to have that down the road.
As I mentioned, this is a reset. And what the district could show to a rated agency, if they happen to come in next year, is you've presented a balanced budget where you're not utilizing any fund balance, as I stated before. That does go a long way with a rating agency. They do not, they'd like to see healthy fund balance. They'd like to see future assessment growth. And they like to see you not relying on the fund balance as much as we have. And again, over the years, we have been able to utilize fund balance in a way to hold down the taxes. This is an opportunity to kind of just, in a one-year time frame, reset you and reset the district moving forward as you're projected going into some lower potential Act 1 indices.
Would a small fund balance usage make any impact versus a $785,000?
I can't tell what a group of evaluators look at. If I'm an evaluator, I would probably look at, first question, does your revenue equal your expenditures? If not, why? I talked about, this was an hour-plus conversation on, the fourth building, phasing it in. We sent the schedules of the future LRTA properties coming in. We sent the projections for the BET investment that's supposedly coming in, and they still dropped us. It's more black and white. You certainly have the ability to tell your story. But at the end of the day, it's their reputation on the line, and they're going to be the ones that have to stand behind their rating. And one of the major things they do look at is, A, your level of fund balance that you have, B, what has that fund balance done over the past few years, because they look at trend, and C, are you presenting a balanced budget moving forward? Hello, Mr.
No,
Board
it-
President.
well,
I
I'll just, obviously, there's not enough support to move forward with using some fund balance, so we'll move forward with the proposal to go with the higher tax rate.
And again, I hate to be the bearer
No,
of
of
this bad
course,
news.
of course, of course.
I will say, futuristically, I think it puts the district in a better place. I foresee all districts having some difficult conversations as we move forward, just because the cost of everything is going up. Not only is it going up for the homeowner, it's going up for school districts. Something as simple as, supplies. This, who knows with the tariffs and all that stuff. Everything that affects a homeowner certainly affects a school district as well.
I mean, I appreciate everyone's opinions and the discussion we've had. I mean, I think you've been very clear with your recommendation, Mr. Nguyen, in the sense that this is the best long-term choice, as painful as it might be, to continue the continued investment that we strive to do for our children. So, again, I appreciate everyone's opinions and thoughts and a fruitful discussion, but unless I hear otherwise, I think our recommendation remains the same.
Thank you, Doctor.
So if there are no objections, I will move to adjourn until our next meeting on June 17th, 2025 at 7 p.m. As there are no objections, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.